Today I want to show you guys how I get that modern pop punk influenced pop sound similar to artists like Knox. And to do that, I'm going to show you a song that I did for Matt, What a Guy, called Punked. I did the production, mixing, and mastering on this, and this is what it sounds like.
I need a rewrite. Feels like I'm being punked. Tell Ashton it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing. The audience is laughing. Feels like I'm in a train wreck. A trick I'd rather play dead. Bring your cameras out and give me a hug. Feels like I'm being punked. I'm being punked.
But before we jump into that, so you're an indie artist and you're producing your own music, but it feels like it's just not quite there. Like there's a little 20% that's missing, but you've reached the end of your production knowledge and YouTube tutorials are not helping. Everybody says it'll sound better after the mix and master, but you've done that before and you've ended up just getting a really polished version of a demo that you weren't really happy with. Recently, I've started offering post-production projects where instead of me producing your song from scratch, we actually use the production that you've built up on your own for a majority of the track, where we add all the spice and the little details and vocal production to bring it up to 100%. If that at all sounds like you, or you'd be interested in something like that, go to the link in the description. You can book a consultation call with me and we can see if it would be a good move for you and your song. So I think we will start with the guitars. I think these three guys are sort of emblematic of what I'm talking about when I say like kind of pop punk, because really what I find to be unique about this sound is we're not going for the sort of like Warped Tour, easy core, like actual like pop punk sound. We're playing a lot of the same things that we would be playing in that style, but we're playing them on slightly less crunchy tones. We're more concerned about it sounding like this really nice polished pop record than a pop punk record from Warped Tour. So let's listen to these guys. You can hear already that it is drivey, it's punchy, but we're not playing the sort of massive Blink-182 style guitar tone that most people assume that we would be. We're just using a little bit of a Marshall tone on a light drive sound. So these three tracks are kind of where we're getting a lot of the energy from. If I solo just these two, you can hear that's sort of like the traditional like power chord pop punk vibe, but I'm playing it on my Strat. I'm almost wanting it to be more chimey than chuggy. And then underneath those two, we have this guy. Which is just sort of a higher extension to make it feel more like a full chord when we play them all together. But you can hear from these three playing together, it's a lot more throaty and clean than it is really crunchy and distorted. Underneath that, we have these guys. And you can tell that these are just me pedaling one note. And you can hear, I'm just kind of pedaling the same thing over and over again. In fact, it's kind of in the same range as that higher chug part. But this is where I'm getting a lot of that like body from. It's from this higher voiced part that I'm letting ring out a little bit more in the low end. I'm not trying to get that body from playing chords all the way down there in a really chuggy tone. I'm actually playing the high chuggy tone higher up on the neck. So we can get sort of that modern pop cleanliness in the mix and still get a bit of that throatiness that we're looking for in this genre. Next, we have these guys. Which again is just my Strat. You can tell that I'm using my Strat for a lot of this stuff. If you're ever concerned about using the same guitar over and over again in the same song, you can do that. You just need to make sure that you're arranging your parts in different ranges on the neck and that you're picking different guitar tones that complement each other but are in like different ranges. So this is more the Andy in a Bottle preset that I'm used to using on this channel a lot because I wanted a guitar to be playing that was playing the full chord progression but with a capo and higher voicing up on the neck. And I feel like adding chords chorus to guitars like these tends to work out a little bit better, because instead of throwing chorus on this really drivey guitar where it's like messing with the phase and everything, instead I can double track a very clean sounding guitar and then throw chorus on that. So now that chorus effect is like a very clean chorus, and I can blend it in a little bit underneath everything. Those are all of the rhythm guitar elements that we have. So now we can look at the lead guitars, which there's a lot of. They're sort of spread out throughout the arrangement. First one we have is this guy. I added this guy in because I'm a big fan of Search the City, which is like an old pop punk band that I was obsessed with for a long time, and they just loved their dotted eighth delays. I know for a lot of other people it's more of Angels and Airwaves, but for me it's Search the City. And just playing this like cascading melody line that just repeats over and over again with this delay, specifically a ping pong delay, it just makes it swim around your head. So if I turn it off ping pong mode, you can hear. That's a totally fine sound, but when I put it to ping pong, now this delay guitar part almost dances around your head, and it adds a lot of space to a mix where this instrument could very easily be like very in the middle. Also, for some guitar parts like this, I will use a lo-fi plugin to try to bring it into that range. So if I turn off this plugin, you can hear it has a lot of throatiness in it, but turned on with lo-fi, you can tell it's kind of on the throatier side like the other guys, and I didn't really need that for this one. So I turned on this plugin, which is just a compressor, but it has this fun lo-fi switch on it. And now it just kind of automatically cuts out all of that annoying low end and a little bit of the top end, and kind of shoves it in this range that no other guitars are sitting. So I feel like it's a useful thing to do sometimes. The next guy I have here, I call it a punk lead because you can tell it's kind of like a punkier tone, but this is essentially a really drivey tone. This is the only like really heavy tone that I have in the song, and I'm just playing octaves. So I'm normally holding the root on the A string and then an octave up from that, and I'm just sort of playing a melody line with those two notes. To me, that is quintessential pop punk. Like, you look at a lot of older pop punk stuff, it will normally be power chords and just that. So it can be a fun way to add something that's a little bit throatier, a little bit lower on the neck, leaves a lot of room for stuff in the top end, but also you can play really simple stuff that doesn't get in the way of the rest of the arrangement. And then we have this, which is the guitar solo, which I was able to play, which is really fun. And when me and Matt were making the song, we were just wanting something that was going to be like fun and poppy. We weren't really trying to make something that was going to be like the craziest solo ever. I think I might have done this in like one session. And you can see I'm not ashamed to like copy and paste certain notes over from different sections. Normally it's just for like consistency, or like maybe I'll hold out this note and I like the way that I do that one there, but then I don't like how I did it here, so I'll just kind of copy and paste it over. And I do use auto-tune on my guitar solos sometimes. When you're making pop stuff, it needs to be in tune, and sometimes you get the right take and the intonation wasn't right at all, and you just need to get it in tune. I don't know what else to say. I also used Rabia Archetype for this because in my mind, this is kind of like a guitar player's amp plugin. You can get stuff that kind of cuts through the mix a lot more. On this guy, I want to dive in a little bit deeper into some of like the presets and synth stuff in here, but as of right now I'm using it as a basic amp and it's great. But you can also see here I have two tracks and the DIs look exactly the same. So what I did was I played this guy up here on top, and it felt really good, but I wanted it to be a little bit beefier in the mix. So I actually duplicated the track. And in Rabia Archetype, you have this transpose feature. So I transposed the DI an octave down, which sounds like this. And then I just blended the two of them together. That low octave just makes it pop out in the mix a little bit more. And then the last thing that I did that was kind of a guitar layer was this guy. Matt knew that he wanted the little melody line that he sings at the end of the chorus to have a little bit of reinforcement behind it. So I've actually done a combo of two elements together. First one is this Serum preset. On this LD B Fine preset, I got it from the Make Pop Music Poptopia preset pack. But then the real weird part is this guy underneath it. So this is actually a guitar that I threw Isotope vocal synth on top of. And then I just EQ'd it a little bit to get rid of some of that low end. I don't know why it works so well, but anytime I need a weird synth lead or a weird guitar lead, sometimes I'll just use a combination of both of them together, because when I combine this weird guitar vocal synth thing with a Serum preset, it just sounds good. I don't know why, but I'm using this on guitar solo stuff all the time where I need a little bit of weirdness blended in with it. All right, and then we are going to look at the synth layers. This first synth layer I wanted to be sort of a higher pedaling motion. I'm always doing this like weird like root to fifth jump in the synth stuff that I do, just because I feel like it's a great way to sort of add a little bit of melody that's not really invasive. Funny enough, I was using this Easy Piano preset, which I think is also from Make Pop Music. So I think I bought 2 preset packs the week I made this, and I was just using them on everything. So we've got some melody going, but then I wanted something that had more rhythm to it. So I added this guy. So this is a weird one. If I turn off all the effects, it's just like a weird piano thing that I EQ'd and distorted with Decapitator. Made it sound a little bit less annoying with MoTT. And then threw a trance gate on top of it. It's just a fun element because nothing else is really doing that kind of like faster, like rhythmic thing in that range. And since it's so distorted, it just like jumps out on top of everything, even though it's a little bit lower in the mix. And then similar to that, I have this guy, which is like a vocal chop thing. Very similar process to this, which is this piano loop thing. And I threw it into simpler and put it into slice mode and set it to transient, so I can just play this like weird sampley keyboard thing. Same thing as before, Decapitator into MoTT. But then I also threw in a little bit of pan flow, so it just kind of moves it between the left and the right ear. So now we have another element that's sort of deeper and throatier, but is also swimming around the head a little bit. And then just some basic keys underneath it. These keys are pretty basic, but I feel like in the midst of the song, having some kind of like steady chord element inside of it, it just makes the whole thing feel a little bit warmer. It gels together a little bit. You're not reliant solely on the guitars to supply the chordal information. All right, now let's move on to the bass, which sounds like this. I really want to buy a jazz bass at some point, but I do not have one right now. So for the meantime, I'm using Punk Bass by Submission Audio, which is just a really nice jazz bass sampled thing. You can get away with sampled bass really easily in this genre, I found. And then I'm just running it into the Fat Clean preset on Neural DSP's Parallax. And then this is the preset that I'm using on most of my bass mixing. So if you want to steal a preset for how I mix bass, this is normally it. And then for drums, we're not doing anything too crazy. Again, we're kind of going for the basic sort of pop punk beat thing. So they sound like this. So for this, I'm just using the Luke Holland kit. from Mixwave. I have stemmed them out a little bit just to make them easier to work with. But yeah, for this, I just wanted it to be like a really aggressive pop punk kit, almost like Travis Barker, Blink stuff, really in your face. So doing quite a lot of compression, quite a lot of clipping. If you're wondering why your drums are not hitting hard enough, it's probably because you're comparing your mix to something that is clipping it on the bus, or you are comparing your unmixed, unmastered track to someone else's mix and mastered track, which also might have clipping on it. But yeah, the whole mix is kind of ducking around the drums. I just think for this style, that's what works best. So like on our guitar bus here, you can see we have two compressors, one sidechain to the kick, one sidechain to the snare. So when we're in these big sections, and that's honestly my thesis for most of how to mix this genre, is just get everything to get out of the way of the drums and have those be the punchiest part, because we're in pop and the guitars can be adjusted to whatever they need to be. As long as the vocals are good and the drums are good, the guitars and the synths can just kind of fill in anything else. I have made many guitar players angry with that comment, so take that for what it's worth. But you could hear there's a couple points in this drum kit where it's just kind of like wide and open. So to fill out those spaces where it's just kind of like big and open, we have some percussion loops going. And I bury those up quite a bit in the mix. But when you have those kinds of elements buried in the mix underneath a kit that's wide and open, you can barely hear them. When you put on headphones, you can kind of hear like the 16th notes just subtly. I think it just makes it feel a little bit better. And then we wanted to get sort of like a big clap section going. So we have these guys. Funny enough, kind of sound robotic on their own, but when you're layering them up with a bunch of other elements like the instrumental, like they're subtly there. They're meant to be a texture to the drum kit and the guitars that are already playing, so they don't feel as like samply and robotic. But yeah, when you're doing stuff like that, it doesn't need to be like a crazy like hyper sampled clap library. I think I literally just brought in some loops. If you can throw in some loops that are like kind of organic-y, that will work best, because you'll get the actual natural feeling of like things clapping and being on one time and then being off another. But yeah, a majority of this clap sound comes from this Kashmir Stadium clap, which you can tell is just really robotic and just really fake sounding. But in the context of the mix where the guitars are kind of the main punching element and then there's a kick on top of it and they're buried in the mix, they don't sound as fake. And then we have our sound effects, which I feel like in this genre, you kind of need smooth transitions and risers and crashes just to accentuate what's already happening in the track. So you can see we have quite a few risers and then one crash, which you can hear. There's multiple risers, but they're all doing different things. You have this one that's sort of like a white noise riser that's really long and is sort of going over that whole section. You have this guy, which is a faster sort of like piercing high-end riser. You have this guy, barely there, but it's a little bit of like a whistly tone, which is more of like an EDM riser thing. It's only subtly there in the final track, but I think it's cool to have like a little bit of a tonal riser going up. And then this guy, which is an actual note that is tuned to the key of the song that we're in. So you can see we have multiple risers going, but they're all doing different things. So it's not like I have one white noise riser and then the exact same white noise riser over again. Like they're all meant to do different things in the transition. And then we have just the most purest white noise crash, just so that when we go to the drum kit and there's like the double-handed cymbal crash, that like wash kind of rings out a little bit longer, because on actual drum cymbals it's like psst, and they like kind of die out pretty quickly. But this, it just sort of extends that tail a little bit. Next, we can look at vocals, which this is what they all sound like together.
Punked, tell Ashton it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing. The audience is laughing.
which there's a lot of ear candy stuff going on with these guys. So first we have our main vocal.
My phone didn't charge, so I woke up late. Like my keys in the car, today is going great.
Just really verbed out, but also like really gritty. I find that with this genre, blending in a little bit of distortion, it can keep things from sounding a little bit too clean. But then I have that vocal track sort of printed out, and depending on how I do certain ear candy passes, I'll just print out the whole vocal with the mixing chain on it. And then in some places, I'll throw it into these separate tracks that have their own different delays or effects on them. And then I'll sort of selectively go through and mute them for different sections. But I think I did that for this track and then ended up liking how it sounded with all of them on, that I just kept it on the whole time. So we have this guy, which is like a ducking 16th note.
Phone didn't charge, so I woke up late. Like my keys in the car, today is going great.
So it's ducking when he is singing, but then it kind of lets the delay notes out when he's done singing. So if I turn ducking down to 0.
Phone didn't charge, so I woke up late. Like my keys in the car, today is going great.
And I just did a bunch of different variations of that. So I did one that is a quarter note, and then I did one that's an 8th note. So all of them together sound like this. But you can see that because they're all ducking, even though they have like different times, like a quarter note, an 8th note, and a 16th note, you can have all this crazy delay stuff that's filling out a bunch of space, but then it all ducks out of the way of the main vocal at the same time.
My phone didn't charge, so I woke up late. Like my keys in the car, today is going great.
And then I have what I like to call like little vocal fillers. So I took one note of Matt singing, threw it into a really long reverb through this transgate on it. But then I reversed it, so now we have this tail that can sort of lead up into stuff. But then I cut off the beginning part because that's a little bit dry, and then I can just sort of fade it in whenever I want. And I specifically threw this guy here to lead into this first note.
My phone didn't charge.
It's like that first word that he's singing, so this like ghost riser kind of leads into that. And you can hear I did the same effect again multiple times in the song, but leading into the word that he's going into.
Months ago. Now I don't know if this is real life, but I'm as real as they come.
So having it dynamically change keeps it from sounding the same. We can also look at some of the other stuff that I'm doing. So you can see I have this guy just filling in that empty space in between when he's singing a line and when he's not singing a line.
This is real life.
It just makes the song feel more full. I don't know. I don't mind writing where things are just open and empty, but for pop stuff, I like filling it out a bit more. And then this was a sample that I found from, looks like the oversampled Volcano pack. Just to add a weird little like throw, specifically in the pre-chorus.
8 months ago. Now I don't know if this is real life, but I'm as real as they come.
And then I have a couple of words where I've thrown that rendered vocal onto its own track that has like a massive reverb. So you can hear this guy.
Going great. Then I slipped and up.
And all of this is just to fill out the main vocal so that it feels like there's always something new and exciting happening moment to moment, like every few bars. You don't just have like the same like reverb effect that's just over and over and over again. Like it dynamically will like change depending on what's happening. And then we have a couple of instances of vocal synth down here.
I don't know if this is real life, but I'm as real as they come.
Just a little bit of a gritty layer to fill out the vocal, just because it's one vocal happening right now at this point in the song.
No, I don't know if this is real life, but I'm as real as they come.
And then when we look to the rest of the song, we actually have like the normal-ish sounding backup vocals. So we have like some harmonies and some doubles.
Feels like I'm being punked, tell lashing it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing, the audience is laughing. Feels like I'm in a train wreck, a trick I'd rather play dead. Bring the cameras out and give me a hug. Feels like I'm being punked.
So we have a center dub here in the middle underneath the main vocal.
Punked, tell lashing it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing.
Just to fill out what's happening right in the middle of the vocal, I also don't mind the middle vocal being a little bit more processed than the rest of them. And then we have just a bunch of stereo doubles.
Punked, tell lashing it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing, the audience is laughing. Feels
And then under that we have our low octave.
punked, tell lashing it's enough.
Just to get like that punk rock like beef to it. I don't know, a lot of pop punk stuff just has like a low octave in all the time. And then we have our harmonies.
Feels like I'm being punked, tell lashing it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing.
So those are all of the tracks. In terms of my send effects, we're using standard plate. We have a little bit of ROM reverb for the longer elements. Mainly just that little keys thing. And then when we have that guitar solo come in, we have a little bit of a dotted eighth delay just for that guy. Or I'm sorry, it looks like it's just an eighth note. And then for mastering, I actually mastered this song in a different session, but this was kind of the ethos that I took with it. A little bit of soothe on this Bounce the Grammy Awards preset, a little bit of EQs, just some high passing, some low mid cut, and then some top end boost. 2 different compressors, one that's high passed to the snare, and then another one that's sort of a general compression. A little bit of the Better Maker EQ, and then a basic limiter. And this is what all of it sounds like together.
My card wouldn't charge, I spilled a drink on my date. I went in for a kiss, she gave me a handshake. I went home all alone, inside I wanted to scream. Blowing up your phone, text coming back green. Now I don't know if this is real life, but I'm as real as they come. If there's a script I need a rewrite. Feels like I'm being punked, tell lashing it's enough. Feels like my world is crashing, the audience is laughing. Feels like I'm in a train wreck, a trick I'd rather play dead. Bring the cameras out and give me a hug. Feels like I'm being punked, I'm being punked.
So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I will link Matt's song down in the description. And yeah, if you are interested in any free downloads or guitar tones or things like that, check out the Gumroad below. If you're interested in having me produce your song like this, again, the link is in the description. Yeah, I will see you guys next week.